Okay, thank you. Today, I want to argue that digitization is changing the very nature of culture, of communication, of politics, and everyday life. As proof of that, we're having a Zoom meeting today through digitization, where I'm sitting in my house in Los Angeles, California. It's about 8:30 in the morning, and I guess you're at night in Turkey, but we're able to communicate because we have a digitized culture. So, what I want to do is talk about how this emerged. And I'm actually going to use the approach of Marshall McLuhan. And I'm going to talk about the evolution from oral culture to book culture to electronic culture and finally to digital culture, just to give you a sense of the importance of communication technology and the revolutionary effects that, first of all, the book, and then the radio, and then the movies and television, and then the internet and social media and digitization is taking place. This comes from Marshall McLuhan, who's a Canadian media theorist who shows the importance of media and technology in our cultures. For McLuhan, culture was initially an oral culture. And that's true whether we're talking about European culture, Turkish culture, every culture in the world was initially oral. Religious celebrations were oral. The tales of Homer, the Ulysses, the Odyssey were orally communicated, memorized by tellers of tales. This also happened with the initial spreading of religion. Christianity, the word, was spread through Christ's disciples and eventually was written down in the Bible. And it's the same thing, of course, with the Old Testament, with the Quran and Islam. Every world religion went from being an oral culture to being then written in a published in a book culture. So the major revolution of the modern age for McLuhan is print technology. That print technology made possible first the publication of biblical texts. The Gutenberg Bible was the first press, the first book that Gutenberg printed in Germany, and it went all over Europe, was translated into every language. And curiously, the publication of the Bible led to fights over what the true meaning of the Bible was. So you have Protestantism emerging from Catholicism. And then within Protestantism, you have Martin Luther, Calvin, etc. So the publication of books and the Bible led to a lot of religious controversies where there were arguments, etc., about the Bible. So for Gutenberg, the uh, print technology, the book, is the creator of the modern world. Think of the American Revolution or the English Revolution. All of our revolutionary texts were written in pamphlets. Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man. Thomas Jefferson and our other patriots wrote the Declaration of Independence. All of these are published in pamphlets. They're published in newspapers. They went through this 13 colonies of the United States. They started a revolution. And you have the same thing in Europe. In the French Revolution, it was Rousseau and Voltaire and all of the French revolutionaries that published their books against monarchy for democracy. So a whole world of European and then global revolutions came through the book technology that was a major instrument of communication and of political change. Likewise, world literatures and cultures were created through the book. Before the printing of Shakespeare, only a few people in London could go to the plays of Shakespeare in the Globe Theater. But once Shakespeare is published, all over England, people are reading his plays. They're translated into different languages. And all of the great English literature, the novels, create the plays of Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton, and the poets. It's the book that creates the national culture of England through technology, through print technology. The same in France. You suddenly have French culture, where all of the great French books from Rabelais through Rousseau, Voltaire are published. And so you have French national culture. In Spain, you have Cervantes. You have the Spanish playwrights, Calderon, Lope de Vega. I don't know the history of Turkey, so I don't know who your most famous writers are, but it's really the printing of the book through every culture that creates the national culture. So this is the first part of McLuhan, which talks about the rise of the book and of book technology. But in the 20th century, McLuhan saw another revolution happening from the print, and that was what he called electronic culture. First, the radio. The radio spreads throughout every country. In Germany, many people consider Hitler the great manipulator of radio, that all of Hitler's speeches and rallies created great enthusiasm for fascism. In Italy, you have Mussolini also using the radio. And the radio becomes not only a political instrument of political change, et cetera, but it also becomes a cultural revolution. So I should have mentioned film. Film and radio came from the same period. Film is not exactly electronic, it's not a broadcast culture, but film also, through its visual and audio culture during sound films, created national cultures. Previously, it was books that created the American culture. Suddenly, it's Hollywood. Movies are creating it, and radio is creating it. All of our genres of soap operas, cop shows, melodramas, adventure stories, cowboy stories, these genres of the film and then the radio create national cultures. Again, Hitler, the tribal drum, using radio film. Uh, Hitler made a great propaganda film, The Triumph of the Will, that was a celebration of the Nazis. There was a rally at Nuremberg. You saw Hitler coming in an airplane through the sky, landing in this medieval town, then giving a lecture to thousands of Germans in a stadium. Again, it's the technology that makes possible, in this case, film, radio, these new political cultures of fascism, which is a mass culture. Now, my other guys, Adorno and Horkheimer, Marcuse, members of the German critical theory. I'm going to give their perspective next. McLuhan stresses technology, the media, as the main cultural revolutionary force from the modern age through or from oral culture to book culture to electronic culture with film, movies, and then movies, radio, and then television. Now, Adorno and Horkheimer are German Jews who leave Hitler's Germany. They come to settle in the United States. They're immigrants. And they come to Columbia University, where I got my PhD in philosophy and studied a few decades later. Well, Adorno and Horkheimer started going to the movies every day. Um, Around Columbia universities, there's many great movie theaters. They studied the radio. They were the first to do a radio research project at Columbia University with Paul Lazarsfeld. So the Frankfurt School argued that the culture industry in the United States was creating American culture, which is a combination of the media of communication that McLuhan talked about, along with the capitalist mode of production, the capitalist corporations that owned the media. We have in all the big cities great newspaper producers, the Hearst family, many different barons of print. We had initially three radio networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, that have the radio shows. So they are capitalist corporations that are using the radio to create shows that celebrate the American family, American police, American legal system, American political system, and they're filled with advertising. So they're advertising products, the American way of life. This is what Adorno and Horkheimer called the culture industry. So they argued that in capitalist societies, the culture industry was creating capitalist cultures. In places like Britain, the UK, France, where they had state media, where radio, for instance, and then later television was owned by the BBC, the British Broadcasting. In France, you have France radio and television. That suddenly the electronic media, Adorno and Horkheimer are arguing, are creating the national culture according to who owns the means of production, whether it's capitalist corporations that are creating capitalist culture, or the British or German or French or Russian state that are controlling media. But in any case, it is the mass media. It's television, film, radio that are creating the national cultures. Now, finally, I come to digitization and digital culture. I just wanted to make the point that in all previous eras of the modern ages, according to theorists like McLuhan, the Frankfurt School, Jean Baudrillard, the postmodern theorist, argues that with digital culture, electronic culture, we're in a whole new era of simulation. That Here we are in cyberspace, me talking to you from Los Angeles to Turkey because of digital culture. I think you're recording this on YouTube. If you make a YouTube of this lecture, it can be put on and people can see it in, I don't know, Germany, wherever people want to follow YouTube lectures. So you see that digitization is creating a completely new digital culture, and that the internet is becoming a major instrument of communication. Now, it's also becoming an instrument of wealth. Google, YouTube, Facebook, these are the Apple, these are the great corporations now, just like ABC and NBC were the great media networks that became very powerful and very influential. So too now it is social media that are using digital capital. So I invented the word techno-capitalism to describe what you might call digital capitalism. In other words, the capitalism that's promoted by social media. And look who's the richest guy in the world and now the most powerful. It's Elon Musk. His best friend is Donald Trump. And this gets me into the political part of my talk. I told you how earlier politics was influenced by radio with Hitler and Mussolini, whereas FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, our US president during the Depression and World War II, had fireside chats on the radio. He talked to the American people about American problems and tried to soothe them that his New Deal was solving the Depression problems. My parents, by the way, were Depression era parent kids. Their families were broke, unemployed during the Depression. Roosevelt came, put the economy back to work. My parents went to college thanks to Roosevelt. They went to Washington and worked for Roosevelt in the White House with the New Deal. World War II came. My father joined the Navy. The United States beat fascism in World War II. So Franklin Roosevelt was a god for my family. And since then, all of my family are supporting the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party that we see as the party of big business, or worse, under Donald Trump. Donald Trump is using the Republican Party as his instrument of power, of revenge and retribution. He's putting all of his right-wing closest friends in his cabinet. So I'm sure you have the question, what in the hell is happening with America? What is your problem? Why do you go from Franklin Roosevelt to JFK and, good presidents to Donald Trump? Well, it's because of media and digital culture. Trump starts off a television celebrity. He has a show called, what's it called? The Apprentice, where he pretends to be a billionaire. He's not a billionaire. He's a fake billionaire, but he claims he's one on television, and he has this game show that's a competition to see who will be his apprentice and work for him. So Trump became, first of all, popular as a celebrity through television, but he started his political career through Twitter. Again, digital communication gave Trump political power, just like the media gave him celebrity, which he used with social media, Twitter, and he got a whole base of supporters. And he basically used social media to create this social movement, MAGA. But social media is a very contested terrain. Um, Elon Musk now controls Twitter and is using it for right-wing disinformation and to promote Trump. Actually, Elon Musk calls Twitter X now, I think, and Trump has his own Truth social media platform. The point is, these digital platforms have become major instruments of power. So whoever controls them has tremendous political power. So this is how Trump and Musk and the Republicans have gained power. So this is the danger of digitization, that it can be used for giant corporation. Google can control information. Elon Musk can control social media. They can use it to gain political power and control the United States. So you see how important digitization is. You couldn't have chosen a more important topic. Now, very briefly, I'm going to conclude by saying, well, what can we do? Well, previously, I published a book on critical media literacy with Jeff Scher, the Media Literacy Handbook, that we need to become media literate. we need to learn the sources of media information. If we're talking about news and information, what are the sources of the newspapers we read? What are the sources of the television networks that we watch? Here in the United States, we have a couple liberal national papers, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They're the best sources of information in my view. Conservatives will tell you different, but in most media scholars realize the Washington Post and the New York Times are the best news sources. We have three television networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, who have 30 minutes a night news program. So those aren't really good sources of news because they're only 30 minutes a day. But we have several cable news networks, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. Now, to choose what network you use and to be media literate, you have to know what are their biases, who owns them. Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News. He's a right-wing Australian media baron. He owns right-wing newspapers all over the world. He owns right-wing TV shows, at least in the English-speaking channel countries in Australia, the UK, the US. And he promotes a very right-wing agenda, which in the era of Donald Trump is very pro-Trump news source. So if you watch him, Fox News, you get all the information or misinformation and propaganda, some of us would say, from Donald Trump. On the other hand, we have another cable news network, MSNBC, that's very liberal. It spends 20 hours a day attacking Donald Trump. It has very strong uh, um, not only liberal commentators, but commentators of color. It has many African Americans, Latinos. In other words, it's the progressive network. You hear from gay and lesbian people, you hear from African Americans, Latinos, Muslims, all different voices and the more critical voices on MSNBC. Whereas CNN, which you probably know, because it was the first U.S. Global television network, it tries to be middle of the road, not to be too much on one side or the other. So if you're media literate and you don't want to get disinformation and propaganda, you have to know the sources of the corporations that own them. You have to know which of the media representatives are good, are they or not? Like in Russia, for instance, which has state media, the people on TV are just doing state propaganda. They're telling you what Putin wants. I don't know what your media system is in Turkey, if you have national media, corporate media, etc. But to be intelligent consumers, you have to know the source of the media, who owns them, what the bias is, what the ideologies are. And it's the same thing with digital literacy. I talk about critical media literacy for film, television, both news and entertainment. But critical digital literacy is to be able to read the internet intelligently, to get information from the internet. You're probably pretty safe using Google because it doesn't have too much of a strong information bias. But when it comes to social media, you get everything from left to right, from intelligent social media sources to crazy ones. And so you need critical media and digital literacy. So that's the end of my talk. And now I'll take questions. But you see, it's incredibly important to understand digitalization because we're living in a digital culture that impacts our politics, our information system, our everyday life, our modes of communication. So we need to know where the information comes from to intelligently interpret it, which means you should go to the university and study politics, economics, philosophy as well. Don't just depend, on the media for your education. The better educated you are, the better you can be a critical media literate citizen and individual and a critically digitally literate person. So on that, I will end my talk and I will take your questions.
Thank you, Professor Kellner, for your deeply thought-provoking presentation. I'd like to offer the first question, if I can offer a privilege for myself. And my question is that Elon Musk, you mentioned, has positioned himself as a free speech absolutist while simultaneously controlling a major communication platform. How can this tension between free speech and ownership be understood through the lens of digital capitalism and media globalization? What do you think?
Well, digitalization just makes the question of free speech all the more important. Now, I have to say, at one time, I completely believed in free, uncensored speech. Not only, in my classroom, but also to go to political demonstrations. I had a public access TV show in Austin, Texas, where I got friends from the university, and we gave a sort of progressive view of the world through public access TV. So I was a great defender of free speech. But by the way, when I left Austin, Texas in 1995, and so I had to give up my public access show, and I came to UCLA, a guy named Alex Jones, who became the most major right-wing media figure, a crazy right-wing media figure, took over the public access show that I had in Austin, Texas, but he also got a radio show called InfoWars. And so, from a right wing point of view, he was just giving all sorts of lies and propaganda, etc. Initially, he was sued because we have a problem with gun violence and school shooting. And so Alex Jones believes in absolute gun rights. And so he thought that the school shooting in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, where about 30 kids got shot in a school shooting, was a fraud. It was a government operation to take people's guns away. So the parents that lost their kids in the Sandy Hook shootings sued Alex Jones for lies that upset them very much because it made it appear that their children were killed by the government, etc. So anyway, the court recognizes limits of free speech. We had one of our great legal theorists, Oliver Wendell Holmes, says you have total free speech, but you cannot yell fire in a crowded auditorium. In other words, speech that harms people, speech that provokes a riot, speech that is racist and gets people like the Ku Klux Klan incited to kill Black people. That kind of hate speech that is dangerous, that is the limit to free speech. And I've come to accept this. Again, I used to be sort of a libertarian, accept all free speech, but I see in the age of Trump how in the age of Alex Jones and the Ku Klux Klan and our right-wing groups, how dangerous speech and disinformation can be. One of the Kennedys, Robert F. Kennedy, Trump is going to make his health minister. Robert F. Kennedy denies that vaccines, work for COVID and different diseases. When I was a kid, people died of polio, of diphtheria, of many, many different diseases, and we got shots, flu shots, polio shots, COVID shots, vaccinations for all these diseases, and we're free from them. But there's what are called vaccination skeptics that believe vaccinations are dangerous. And this is crazy. This is crackpot science. This kills people that believe this and don't get vaccines. So again, I believe there has to be limits on free speech. You can't tell these dangerous lies that, will harm people. Next.
Thank you for your insightful answer. Is there any question from the audience? Bir mikrofon alabilir miyiz? They are bringing a microphone for you.
Okay.
We will receive a question from one of our audience. Yes.
Hi, thank you, Doug, for that talk. This is Natalie Fenton from Goldsmiths in London. So we're not speaking to a Turkish person here. This is from the UK perspective. And I had just a couple of brief responses, really, with questions to them.
Okay.
There's a new debate around techno-feudalism now, and the calling, and the government, the tenant state, as part of that. And I wondered what your response was to that as a new conceptual framing that describes the shift in power that we're seeing from tech giants. I'm not myself entirely convinced, but I'd be interested in your understanding. And then the second comment relates to the idea that digital culture has clearly played a role in the current democratic crisis, but it's not the only role. So if we change digital culture, I think we'd probably still have techno-capitalism.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to the point of critical media literacy being the answer. I think it's crucial, but I also worry that puts the onus entirely on the individual and it lets capitalism off the hook. And I just wondered your response to that. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me answer that first because I completely agree with you. I think it's not enough to become critically media literate and critically digitally literate. It's important, but it's only the beginning. I brought those up because I've been teaching and writing about critical media and digital literacy for a long time. Now, before that, when I was in Austin, when I first came to UCLA, I was a media activist. First of all, a public access television access, where I argued it's important for people in the community to make their own television, their own radio shows, to get a broader range of views in the media, and that all social groups should make use of this technology of television in order to produce their programs. And to some extent, you have the different social movements, the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the LGBTQ plus movement, environmental movement. All of these movements have produced movies, TV shows, music, digital, social media sites, etc. So I think it's important to have that emphasis on alternative media where people also participate in alternative information, which includes what we're doing as academics, which is giving lectures, doing Zoom, writing books and articles, etc. But it's also important to consider media as part and technology as part of social movements. That we have to realize that digital media is so important that we need to have national politics to make sure that it's responsibly owned, managed, and used. In other words, we can't let all these anti-vaccination groups spill all this dangerous language. We need the state to regulate media somewhat. And by the way, I think in the UK, there's more regulation of the media, more of an effort to get state media like the BBC that is responsible and gives accurate and respected information than most countries. So there's a media politics, and it's very important what parties win. So party politics are important to make sure techno-capitalism is regulated, it's controlled in the interests of the people. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are using techno-capitalism for themselves to promote their own agenda. The Democratic Party has a broader base of people that it tries to make programs for. And I think the Labour Party in the UK, but people on the left argue that's still not enough. And we have to push these these parties further. First of all, a genuinely socialist media and techno politics would make sure that everyone had not only education, so everyone would be educated, including critical media literacy and critical digital literacy, but everyone would have access to computers, iPhones, that these would be just part of what everyone has, so that there's not just a small part, or now today, a larger part of people that have these new technologies and have access to the media. But we need to overcome the digital divide between the haves and the have-nots. So again, there's a lot to be done. In the framework of this lecture, of course, I wanted to limit myself, but you raised an excellent point, and I hope I gave something of an answer so that I don't give the impression it's just individuals becoming smarter that we need to save society. We need a lot.
Thank you for your answer. Is there any other question? We have one more question.
So thank you for your speech. I am Muhammed Murat from Bandırma University. And your presentation mostly depends on pro-democrat point of view. You mentioned anti-vaccine approaches of future health minister of United States. And you also mentioned about LGBT community and mentioned saving society. And in some views, LGBT community also harmful for society. And it is just a view. And people can talk about these problems. But if they talk that in United States, they became demonized. And we know Elon Musk's son became a transgender, and without his permission, without the father's permission. And then Twitter, before the purchase, just shut down the Donald Trump's account. And he was a He was the president of United States, and Twitter, as a company, shut down the United States president's account. Then Elon Musk purchased the Twitter and then changed the name. It became X, and the process go on like this. And if this point of view, if we can talk about digital, how can I say, you say that digital capitalism, it is, I think, kind of digital capitalism. It is kind of an authoritarian approach from the left-wing pro-democrat understanding, and pro-democrats, left-wing United States companies. Koptu mu? Görüntü değişti. I'm sorry.
Devam.
I think there was a technical problem. What you say about the digital capitalism of Twitter when he closed Donald Trump's account, and also can we say in Netflix, in Twitter or X about anti-LGBT speeches, and that is not harmful, that is not about school shooting, killing LGBT members, just saying that this can be harmful for society, and there is an authoritarian approach against anti-LGBT movements, anti-Zionist movement, anti-vaccine movements. There is a demonizing against them. And what do you think about that? Is there any?
Well, actually, in terms of my politics, I'm completely pro-democracy. So I'm not saying that civil rights groups or LGBTQ groups are saving society. I'm saying that they're fighting for the rights within society because there's some people that want to deny them rights. Now, I'm basically pro-democracy. I support the movements that are anti-authoritarian, anti-bigotry and bias, and are for civil rights and for democratic participation for everyone in society, no matter what their religion, no matter what their race, no matter whether they're male, female, whatever their sexual proclivities. Everyone, in my opinion, that's the Constitution of the United States. So I'm pro-democracy. Now, in every case, there are groups in society that are attacking. You know, you have racist groups, you have sexist groups, you have homophobic groups, and they're the ones that are often using hate speech and sometimes violence. We know that Black people have been killed, throughout the United States just because of the color of their skin, because racist groups like the Ku Klux Klan, are attacking them. So again, we have to defend democracy and the rule of law, and we have to put limits against hate speech and against certain kinds of prejudice and bias when it creates violence and is harming people, killing people.
Thank you. Do you have any other question? No, we don't. Okay, this concludes our session. Thank you for your insightful presentation, Professor Kellner.
Thank you for your attention.